I shall talk about evocation. I shall evoke the concept. No, I will, I want to evoke the concept, the understanding, rather. I want to evoke the understanding of the concept. You are a gamer, and I will use this as a first point of reference. We can consider the word as a magic spell. The wizard, the magus, utters a word. And let's take an example. But we are faced with limitations. We must thus restrict our evocation with a circle. You may call it a magic circle, a summoning circle. It has many names. It is called zero. It is called the circumference. The first example will be the easiest to understand. I shall evoke my will. I want to move this glass in front of me. No, I want this glass in front of me to move. I take it, I put it somewhere else, and it has moved. It was a cheap trick. It was an easy magic trick. It was easy evocation. Because the plane, the material plane, is the easiest to interact with. Consider another plane. Consider the limitations of manifesting, for instance, the evocation, I want you to love me. This is harder to accomplish, but it is not impossible. I'm good with words, but I prefer to speak. I'm good at writing, but only after I've spoken does my writing truly take the form that I want it to. I used to read a lot when I was younger. And I stopped a couple of years ago. I'm losing my train of thought. I shall use evocation to focus me. I want to help you understand. I want to answer your question. What is your question? Your question concerns me. How has evocation benefited me? I will answer your question. I will. A couple of days ago, I work at a place that manufactures ravioli. They're quite delicious. And I'm in a kind of marketplace, I guess. Well, I'm there when I'm at work, but like the store is there. And it's covered, it's like in a hall. It's quite nice. And there's like different... It's actually built inside of... I don't know the word in English. It doesn't matter. There's like stalls, you can imagine. And on the other side, there's a cook from another store, and she makes soups. And I never really... It's like a pop-up store, I guess. I never really went there, never really looked there. I looked across the hall, and it seemed kind of interesting, but I never went there. And I've been focusing on my actions a lot in the last few weeks. And as a result of my actions, I was kind of in a state where I felt the wind beneath my wings, and I kind of started soaring and flying around this huge hall and looking at the things I hadn't looked at before. And I decided that I want to try something new instead of following the routine that helps me, that I trick myself into believing it helps me. I think it has just as much an aesthetic effect, but I will not get into this. I want to answer your question. So I go over there, and this woman, she's a bit older than me. She's very pretty. I asked to try her cooking. She gives me a bowl and a spoon. And before I take it over, she kind of bends down and takes something from beneath the counter. And she has like her top a bit unbuttoned and reveals a quite beautiful cleavage. And I don't know, the energy, it was just nice. And so I take my soup, I go back to like my workplace, sit down and eat the soup. And like I notice that my body reacts to the stimuli that were granted as a gift. And blood circulates, hardens, and so I listen to my body, I listen to what it tells me. It tells me this woman is a potential mate. Let's call it rather sterilely. So I finish my soup. I go outside to smoke a cigarette, as I do after I've eaten. And I think about the actions that should result from the energy, the stimuli that have entered my body and my mind. And as you can imagine, I feel, I don't know if it's really fear, but there is a bodily reaction in the chest when I consider how I would go about, let's call it telling the truth. Because this was something that I felt to be maybe not necessary, but right. And so I kind of start forming phrases and sentences in my head. I speak many languages. The language I used there was German. So I start like hacking away at the sentence, making it more beautiful with every limitation I put on it, on my evocation. I start to refine the spell. So maybe at this point I can address some nefarious connotations that might arise. But I won't. I will continue with my story. I will continue answering your question. Okay, so the word I chose as the central piece of my evocation, I decided it should be reizend. And I will just quickly look up a translation that I would agree with. Der Reiz in German, the root of the word, is the stimuli. Like it applies to nerves and such things. It's an interesting word because it encompasses both polar extremes. I see here that one translation allows for irritating, but it is inside a chemical and technical context. So the stimuli, der Reiz, in this context is like a rash, something that itches, that you want to scratch. There is like some other bland translations, like delightful, charming, enjoyable. There's lovesome. Lovesome is kind of an interesting word, but still it doesn't. Here we have provoking, which is, in fact, neutral. It has connotations like don't provoke me, but to provoke is like to, I think, enticing. Enticing is a nice translation, but it is not listed here. So there's fetching, adorable. So if we break it down, if someone is reizend, the effect the person produces is both spiritually, emotionally, and physically manifested. It was the right word in German. Oh, I forget the translation I proposed. No, it doesn't matter. You get my point. So, in fact, I am using this internal process of arriving at an evocation to make it easier for me to act. Because if I would not engage in this process, I would not act. I would just return the bowl and go back to work. But I wanted to act. So another central point that I want to get across is taking this seriously. I started taking my wants and my thoughts and my bodily functions seriously. That's not to say that I follow them around like a slave. I engage them. So I go there, I tell her, so I find you, let's say, emotionally, spiritually, and physically influencing me. And I want to know if you are willing to spend time with me in a private manner. So I say private here, it's not the same in English as in German. Privat is just like kind of the opposite of at work. So, but I mean, it's very similar. It means just the two of us without like the limitations of attending to customers. So the effect it produced was instant and just as much mental as physical. Her body moved in accordance to what I was saying. It moved her. And it's like a little tiny dance of her body blushed. Not her cheeks, her whole body blushed. It was kind of a going back, but like bending forwards at the same time, and kind of something like this. So after this effect had kind of settled, she started to consider, let's call it, the implications. And she felt that she was not able to give an answer directly. So the stance I take at the moment is of not forcing things, of taking things as they are, but taking them seriously. So I say, sure, just take as much time as you need. And I actually quit a couple of weeks ago, so I'll be here until the end of the year. Have a nice night. Have a nice evening. As I walked off, I felt strong. Oh yeah, I also told her, like, she like insisted to put this whole thing inside a context of debt. She used those words, that she owes me an answer, and this kind of thing. I told her, you do not owe me anything. It would be nice if you answered my question. But you do not owe me anything. And I also told her that I wanted to say all those things because I knew and I felt that I would regret not doing it. So as I walked away, I felt strong for conquering the inner limitations I felt that I had imposed on myself. And at the same time, I knew that I have the power to influence that plane within me. I think I will end this recording here. I also think that you should watch the video I linked. It's 5 hours. Like, do it on a weekend or do it split up or something. I don't recommend splitting it up. I recommend you take the time to absorb the knowledge, not the understanding, the knowledge that will help you understand in a manner use whatever manner you want. I advise you to be both physically and mentally prepared. So cook something nice for you. Give your body sustenance. Think of something nice. And then watch it. Take notes. And also know that I answered your question in an attempt to be able to speak of the same thing. To be able to know that all the connections and connotations and vibrations in harmony with this term, evocation, coincide, so that in fact we are talking about the same thing. I put on like my serious voice. I use it more than I should, but it helps me focus. So I wish you, I don't know what time it is, it doesn't matter. I wish you a lovely day, full of wind that you shall soar and fly with. Air. Bye-bye.